Welcome to the Ride With Us podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Prescott Rodeo Grounds and the world's oldest rodeo. Its history, traditions, some storytelling, and all the events happening at the rodeo grounds. I'm your host, Greg Mengarelli, and I'm pleased to have my good buddy, Robby, along with me today. Robby, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the events, Robby. You know, a lot of our listeners, maybe they've been to the rodeo once or twice or even a half a dozen times, but maybe they don't really understand what is happening in the arena, how the cowboys and horses or bulls are scored, what goes into a timed event. And I'd like our listeners to kind of have a better understanding of each event. And I thought we might just kind of bump through each one of these a little bit here. And just because of your experience as the arena director and having been around rodeo for decades, just give our listeners a little more flavor so maybe they can better understand what's going on in the rodeo.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's start with a wild horse race. Why don't you take off and give our folks an idea of the three guys out there and what they're trying to do and how you win?
Well, how you win. So the wild horse race, again, the animal's drawn. It's on a draw basis, and we load them up in the chutes, and those guys, they got a three-man team. You know, one guy's on the rein, and then one guy's a mugger, and one guy's the rider. There's multiple terms for the guy on the rein, but
shank man.
Shank man's one, a rein man. You know, they all got their spots, and those guys are pretty good at what they do. So the Broncs are loaded up, and a buzzer goes off, and when those gates open, when they jerk those gates open, then Broncs come out. The rein man is on the the
lead rope.
Yeah, he's the shanker. He's on that lead rope, and he's trying to get that animal squared away so the mugger can grab the horse around the neck, and of course the rider get his saddle on there, and then get saddled up, and mount the horse, and then the object is to ride the horse. There's two barrels in the arena, and they have to ride to the outside of that and then across the finish line right between the two of them. And the first one across that line is the winner, if there is one.
Yep. So let's see here. When the horse comes out of the buck and chute, there's one guy on the rein. Sometimes I see a couple of them. Are they trying? Because that horse is taken off right away.
Yes.
And it's a big horse.
Oh,
you know, I mean, these are, you know, if you're familiar with saddle bronc, those are the larger horses more so than a bareback horse. These are big horses. They usually have some draft horse in them.
Yeah. And
then once that horse settles down a little bit, I always have noticed the mugger is a pretty tall guy. You know, I mean, if he's 6'4" or better, it's better, right? Because you're trying to get him a hold of that horse around the head and upper neck, right?
Oh yeah, you need a big, tall, stout guy to reach up there and get their arm around that horse's neck and somewhat try to control him a little bit. It gets Western,
and then I want to give folks a little idea on that saddle. There's something going on there with that saddle where when they pop it on the back of the horse, that cinch strap kind of comes about halfway. Isn't it rigid?
It is. It's kind of a rigid. It's taped up. They put some plastic and whatnot in there to keep it. It's not so rigid that it hurts the animal by any means, but it allows them when they sling that saddle over for that thing to run over. That way one guy can grab it, and it's kind of a quick release style buckle instead of a latigo or anything, so they can
get it on quick.
And they're allowed a little time beforehand to get that fitted to that particular animal.
Okay, now that's a good thing to know then, because you got different sizes of horses.
Yes.
They can then fit that cinch strap so that it's about where they need it.
Yes.
On that particular horse. That's good to know.
Yeah. And then it's got kind of a bareback type style handle on it that they grab onto, and then it's got another handle usually in the back behind the cantle there to get a hold of.
Different than bareback or saddle bronc.
Yeah.
You're not going to see the cowboy put his other free hand up in the air.
Correct.
Because they have a suitcase handle up front and a suitcase handle kind of, like you said, kind of behind him.
Yes.
And then they ride that. You'll see the two other guys on the team, and usually everybody kind of starts joining in when everybody's on the horse, if that happens, to try to get that horse to run around the arena fence, like you say, between the barrel, right up on the grandstand, right, is where the finish line is.
Yeah, the barrel's out from the grandstand fence. They got to go around it on what I call the outside, and then come down to the middle across it. And you're right. The minute a guy gets mounted up, the other teams are helping him because he's not going to steer that animal.
Right.
You got to kind of hoo-yah it to get it to go where it needs to go. And those guys all help each other. They're just glad for everybody, and they all help them get across. It's cool.
And these teams are there most of the week, aren't they? Aren't they entered multiple nights?
They're in every perf.
Every perf.
Yep.
So all those guys you'll see out there doing the wild horse race are doing 8 performances. So there's a prize for that particular performance, as well as an aggregate of all 8 performances?
Yeah, of the overall. Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And they actually have their own association. That's not a PRCA sanctioned event.
Yeah.
That's its own event. So, and they have kind of their own association, but those guys travel around just like regular rodeo cowboys. They go to different rodeos, and they got their own little circuit. And it's kind of a cool deal. Yeah.
Well, I just love the fact that we start with the wild horse race. I can remember Harry Vold, you'll remember this. He was always right out front when the wild horse race would start on his mount and would blow the whistle. And that's how the wild horse race used to start, with Harry Vold.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was classic. Yeah. Classic Duke of the Chutes out there getting it going.
Well, that's the wild horse race. So let's move on to the steer wrestling or bulldogging. And I want to mention to our listeners, this is like an orchestra. So we've just used the buck and shoots, right, for the wild horse race. Mm-hmm. Now we're moving over to the rope and shoot, or the rope and boxes, for a timed event, which is important for folks to think about, so that you can now figure out what's going on next in the buck and shoots, and you got a break to get that ready while we're doing steer wrestling.
That's correct. Yeah. So that gives you that break to line up the broncs that are going to come in for the bareback riding. Mm-hmm. It gives you that break. So we go to the timed event in. Those animals are already loaded. Those timed event animals, like you said earlier, they're drawn as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a sequence, as those names are in that program, as best we can, they keep to that and get those animals loaded up and run that event. And then they go back to the buck and shoot area. And that gives the timed event time to line up for their next event.
Yep.
So it is an orchestra.
Yep.
Yes.
It is an orchestra, and it's well thought out. So with the steer wrestling, there's 2 cowboys, each on a horse, and they're backed into 2 different stalls over there on the chute there for the steers. Walk us through what's going on.
Yeah, so you got your bulldogger and you've got your hazer, and they're both backed in, one on each side of the timed event chute. The bulldogger, he's in charge because it's his run, so he'll give the nod. The gate opens. There's a barrier. That means the animal is given a certain amount of lead, mm-hmm. and they come out. The hazer, he keeps that steer in line mm-hmm. and close enough for the bulldogger to be able to dismount down and set his legs, and then stop the forward progress of that animal and roll them back over where they flip over to the other side. And then that's mm-hmm. when time ends.
Yep.
So,
yeah, there's so much that goes on in those 5-6 seconds that it's hard to kind of break it all down. One thing that happens, unfortunately more frequent than I'd like, is the listeners out there that have been to the rodeo, they'll hear, they broke the barrier and they got a 10-second penalty. Mm-hmm. So, you mentioned this already, but I want to make sure everybody understands. You said that steer gets a little bit of a lead.
Correct.
And then once that amount of space or length, which is it like 15, 20 feet?
Yeah.
So once that steer reaches that point, what happens is it triggers the release of a little string or rope in front of the box of the bulldogger.
Correct.
if the bulldogger takes off before that steer gets out to the end of the rope that triggers the release of that, there's a little string tied on there that breaks.
Correct.
And that's breaking the barrier.
That's correct. Yes.
And I think that's something that a lot of folks probably have never really understood. But like you said, it's just a head start for the steer in this case. And if that cowboy leaves too early, then he gets a penalty. So it's fair for everybody that, you got to give that steer a little bit of a lead.
Right. Yeah. Give him a little bit of lead, and it it seems like a little bit, but it's actually a lot. So
yeah.
I mean
you got to have a fast horse,
fast.
Right?
Those horses are lightning fast. Yeah, they're the best in the business.
We'll talk more about horses maybe when we get to barrel racing and stuff, but I don't think people understand the value of a lot of these horses these days. Like a good steer wrestling horse, is it 50,000 or more?
At least.
At least. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are expensive animals. Yeah.
When I watch the NFR, Robby, the National Finals Rodeo, it's always fun for me to watch every horse when they back in there. There'll be 10 contestants, and there's only about 5 horses that run.
In that event, they do a lot of sharing horses. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, once a guy's got a really good horse, you give a percentage of your winnings, right, to the owner of that horse.
Correct. Yeah.
But like you say, those athletes, those horses are amazing, and they're fast. And, that has changed a lot, wouldn't you say, in the last 15, 20 years in terms of the value of those horses? Yeah.
It's really went astronomical in the last 15 years or so.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we finished the steer wrestling. Like you said, now you've had time while that was going on. Charlie and his crew are getting the bareback horses ready to go. So let's talk about what is bareback, which is different than saddle bronc. This is bareback.
Okay. So bareback riding is a one-hand rigging, either left or right-handed, depending on the rider. And it's cinched around the girth of the animal, right behind the front shoulders. Mm-hmm. The animal is flanked. It's not painful to the animal. It just gives them something back there that they try to kick off.
Yep.
The broncs are loaded, as we said earlier, either left or right-hand delivery, depending on what that animal's best trip is. Mm-hmm. And then the rider will mount in the chute, and on the first jump out, that rider has to have his spurs above the points of the shoulders on that animal when the front feet hit the ground, the first jump. Otherwise, he missed the mark out. Yep. And missing the mark out means no score.
Yeah. When you see a red flag go down on the arena floor, or yellow flag down, one of the judges has noticed that his spur was not at the top of the shoulder when he came out on the first jump.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's the mark out.
That's the mark out.
Yeah. So then we're going for 8 seconds.
So it's an 8-second ride. And the whole key with bareback riding is that it's like a dance. It's the fluid motion. As the bronc bucks out and his back feet kick up, that rider's front feet will go to the front end of the horse. Mm-hmm. And as he bucks, that rider is going to rake those spurs back, and the more fluid and in time, if you will, it's not hard to see. You watch a couple and you'll know what it means by timing, but the object is to spur from your legs all the way extended, all the way up to your rigging. That's going to get you the most points, and that's what the judges are looking for. Yep. And also to stay real square on that horse, not getting off to one side or spurring with both feet over to the same side of the neck. Yep. That'll all lose you points. Yep. And
that's pretty narrow up there, right?
It's very narrow.
I mean, you're talking about a 6-8 inch, seat, right?
Correct. Yes.
Up on the back of that horse.
Yes.
So you talk about timing, which is really important, and spurring. There's 2 judges. So talk to us about how you get a good score and how it is scored.
Okay. So there's 2 judges. There's actually 3 judges in the arena. There's a judge behind the chutes that's making sure that animal has a clean getaway and doesn't foul a gate by running into it. There's certain things that can cause either a re-ride or a disqualified ride. But in the arena, on the actual numbers, there's 2 judges, and they score from 1 to 25 each per rider and per animal. So that's
Mhm.
50 per judge,
Yep.
total of 100 possible for the
Yep.
entire rider and animal.
Yep. No, very good. I think that's very helpful for our listeners. And I want to go a step further with that. You know, people typically don't understand the score. You know, they see a guy ride and they just think that was a good ride and he should get 90 or whatever. But I want our listeners to pay more attention this year when they go to the rodeo, particularly at how much the horse is bucking, how high, you know, the elevation of the back legs, and does he have a good motion that's consistent,
Right.
as well as the cowboy reaching up every time, like you said, spurring, and how far is he running the spur action, and is it consistent? That's what I typically look for.
That's what they look for as well, Greg. They like the horse's back legs to extend when they buck and kind of kick over their head, we call it, and to really stretch out. And you know, ducking and diving moves are okay as long as them back legs are kicking and they're bucking. That's what they're looking for on the animal. The other thing on the rider is and that timing and that continuity is those legs are even. You know, they're not really getting him on one side and kind of just hanging, rattling on the other side. They're just it's a two-stroke deal. You know, each legs and timing is everything in that event, and that's what those judges are looking for.
Yeah, seems like there's a lot of balance going on with these cowboys on that on the bareback. Yeah,
and staying square on one is, you know, I mean, staying square is a lot harder than it looks. You know, you can hang on, but sometimes, but staying square is
well,
the
and
main
you just
battle.
have that handle. You know, people need to know there's no seat. You're sitting right on the horse,
right?
And you got that handle right between your legs there. But that's it, with one hand and the other free hand up in the air.
Yeah, you're trying to balance yourself with your free hand, and the whole time that horse's rump is banging you in the back of the head.
Yep.
So I mean, it's an art for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot harder than we all realize.
Yeah.
So I want to cover a couple things, and this will then apply to saddle bronc and bull riding as well, any rough stock. But you mentioned a flank strap, and we've talked about spurring. So I want to make sure our listeners understand this. We're not hurting the animals. So with the spurs, they're blunt.
Yes.
And it doesn't poke into the skin or anything like that when you're spurring up on the shoulder.
Absolutely. It does not poke in. As a matter of fact, if you were to cut an animal with a spur or any other piece of your equipment, you are disqualified.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not the intent. The spurs, they're not rough on that animal at all.
Yep.
No.
Then the other thing is, you mentioned a flank strap, and I want our listeners to understand this flank strap is on the horse for 10 seconds or so, maybe. It's a sheepskin lined flank strap. And it's not overly tight. It's just enough where they're, like you said, they're trying to kick it off, and that's put on right as soon as they're coming out of the gate.
Yeah. So it's draped around there before the gate opens, and there's a lead on it.
Yep.
And that lead is rawhide. It's a big long latigo. And as that horse leaves the chute in both the bareback and the saddle bronc riding, that thing tightens up some, but it's not tight. It's just a hindrance back. They want to get rid of it.
Yep.
They just want to kick it off. And then when the ride is over and the pickup man comes in, the first thing that you'll see is those pickup men will reach and undo the quick release on that in order to either, you know, break the tension loose, and it may hang on the animal, but most of the time it just falls right off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's really kind of, I think of it, Robby, like a cue for the animal. Like, oh, when that goes on, now I'm performing for 10 or more seconds. And it, again, doesn't hurt the horse at all. It's like a cue for them to buck. They
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. They know it's time to go.
Yeah. A lot of those horses won't even buck without a flank strap on them because of that exact thing. That is their cue to do their job.
Yep. All right. Very good. Let's go to tie down roping. So now, again, we used our bucking chutes, and we're going to move back to the timed event area where they've got all their calves lined up, and walk us through what's happening on tie down.
Okay, so tie down roping is a single person event. They've drawn an animal and a calf, and that calf's loaded up. It's let go. Again, there's a barrier for a head start, if you will. And that roper comes out, ropes the calf, and dismounts his animal, runs down the rope, picks the animal up, what we call flanking.
Mm-hmm.
So he grabs the rope in one hand and the flank, the haunch of the animal back by where the rear leg is.
Yep.
Picks the animal up and drops it. And in his mouth or her mouth, he has pig and string and pulls 3 of the legs together. The loop is put around one leg, and then 3 legs are tied together with a slip knot. And when the tie is complete, the contestant raises his or her hands, time stops, and that animal there's a certain length of time that animal has to stay tied in order to be a qualified run.
Yeah. Is it about 6 seconds?
6 seconds.
6 seconds. So they have to run back to their horse, put slack on the lariat.
Yeah, I forgot that part. Yeah.
Yep. And then the clock goes for 6 seconds. So if you see a calf get up in that 6 seconds after there's slack, then that is a disqualification.
That's a no time. Yes.
Yeah, no time.
And again, there's penalty, obviously the barrier too.
Yeah, yeah. So we talked about the barrier on the steer wrestling or the bulldogging, and there's a barrier again for the tie down roping. I think this one is a lot about agility. There's some serious athletes in this event that are roping, of course, but you're running down that calf, flanking the calf, which sometimes there's some pretty big calves out there, and people don't understand, I think, the importance of that roping horse given some tension as they pull up on that flank. When you're trying to flank them, the horse is helping you by putting some tension back
Absolutely.
on that rope.
Yeah, the horse has a lot to do with how a run goes, and that tension can make you or break you. When that horse starts backing up, obviously it brings that animal closer to the contestant, so he gets there quicker. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is it really helps you into flanking them because those animals are not easy.
Yep.
That's not near as easy as it looks.
Yeah, and I think for our listeners, I want to talk about 3 ropes. So there's the main rope, which is the lariat, which is what you rope the calf with.
Correct.
Then there's another lead rope that these guys tuck in their belt. Mm-hmm. And what's going on there, if you watch closely, as they're running down that rope, when it gets to the end of that, that's the cue for the horse to start backing up.
Correct.
And so that's the second rope. And then the pig and string you already talked about, which is in their teeth, which they use to tie the 3 legs up.
Yeah, and you'll see that lead rope kind of serpentine through those contestants' belt on one side or the other, so it can feed out. And that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, I think some of the best, I hate to say this is not fair, but some of the better athletes are tie down ropers and the horses.
Yeah.
The training that goes into those horses is incredible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, to dismount and depending on which side you dismount on, some of them have to go underneath their rope. I mean, they are real athletic. That's a real athletic event.
In our arena, Robby, would you say under 10 seconds is a really good run?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think under 10 is good anywhere. Yeah.
Now I want to talk about something with timed events. We didn't talk about this with bulldogging, but with bulldogging and tie down roping, there's 2 runs. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we don't have a long go, short go at the Prescott Rodeo. You're a one and done is what we call it. So they're here for one and they leave. They get 1 bronc, 1 bull.
On the rough stock.
Yep, on the rough stock, and they don't come back the last day, whoever the high winners are, for a short go round.
Cheyenne and some of the other rodeos will do kind of a tournament style.
Correct.
Which is not what we do.
We don't do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's multiple reasons for that. But however, in the timed events, and this is another thing that's kind of unsung, is they get 2 animals for their 1 run. Mm-hmm. And the times of which are added together for the aggregate. Yep. The thing that the folks don't know is the one they see them run in the arena, there's still a slack either before or after the rodeo, usually after, that goes on till the wee hours of the morning to get their second runs down.
Yep.
And those people get 2 shots, but it's still for the one performance.
Yep. So there's prize money for the performance that our listeners are watching in the arena.
Right.
And then there's another batch of prize money for the aggregate based off of your 2 runs total.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yes.
And here's something I think would be good for our listeners to know. Sometimes you'll see a cowboy struggling, but he's going to finish and going to get a time. And the reason he wants to get that time, no matter what, even if it takes him like on tie down rope and you might see a 18-second run or something, the reason he wants to do that is he wants to make sure he's in the aggregate, because you have to have 2 complete runs in any timed event to be entered in the aggregate.
That's correct. Yeah. So if you get a no score, you've wasted your other run, if you will, and you so.
Well, and will that person then not run in the slack?
It depends. I mean, usually they do go ahead and run probably just for the practice, and they're there. A lot of those folks travel together too, so
they're there
maybe
anyway.
Their traveling partner did make it or whatever. But and then going down the road, anything will lower you in the average for the year too. That brings your average down because it's all calculated out for the whole PRCA run, trying to get for the gold buckle.
So I want our listeners to know slack is an extra rodeo typically after the performance. And a huge shout out to your team and those volunteers that help, because they're not done until 1 or 2 in the morning sometimes.
Oh yeah. Almost every night we're not done until the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah. Every timed event, you get 2 animals, 2 runs for the aggregate.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
And in the old days, there was slack in the rough stock as well. But now we don't have as many rough stock riders as they used to. But I can remember back in the 80s when I got on tons of bulls in slack. I mean, so slack has been used for years and years and years in order to get people done, so that the performance doesn't just run 10 hours long,
And I would say an exception, again, some more insider information, on a Saturday, you're going to see the same folks running Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening for timed events. So they don't have a slack. They have 2 performances.
Correct. That's the one day that we don't have a slack is the 2-day, the Saturday when we have 2.
We don't need more to do that day, Robby, because we got a parade where we're up at 5 in the morning. We got an afternoon perf at 1:30. We got an evening perf at 7:30. So it'd be hard to talk your guys into doing a slack after the 7:30.
It's that's a welcome day. We all look forward to that one. Yeah.
A little bit of beer drank after that one. So, all right. Now we're staying in the timed event area, and we're going to go to breakaway roping. And I love the fact that Jim Dewey Brown brought breakaway roping to our rodeo. Not every rodeo does breakaway, but this is wildly popular and a lot of fun for the crowd to watch.
Oh yeah. This is the next huge event in rodeo is breakaway. And we are very lucky that Jim, with his knowledge and experience and connections, got the WPRA to bring those girls in here. And I will tell you that the first year we had it, those gals were so elated that they were able to compete, because there isn't a lot of it. I mean, it's growing, but there's just not a lot of it. And it's a great event. Those girls are handy. I mean, they are good cowgirls and fierce competition. But they're just really, really glad to come to Prescott and be able to compete in their event.
And the other thing I'm happy to say, Robby, Jim Dewey has done added money that's equal to every other event, with the breakaway being equal to every other event with added money.
Yeah, that's correct. We were able to up that so that it's even. And that's another thing is a lot of the rodeos that have them, they don't get to compete for the same amount of money, which, there's multiple reasons for that. However, they've got the same expenses as everybody else going down the road. So it's really nice to have them on a level playing field here in Prescott.
Well, let's break down. It's about less than 3 seconds of action, but tell us what's going on.
So again, draw an animal, by number. That animal's loaded up. They're backed into the rope and chute. They give the nod. Animal has the advantage. There's a barrier. They take off. They swing their loop, rope their animal, but they don't dally. So they're not stopping the forward progress of that animal. The rope comes tight and you'll see the rope slip out of their hands. And then that's when the time stops.
Yep. So it's my understanding they put a little flag tied to the end of the rope, and then the rope is tied with a little string that pops free.
Yes.
Once they hit the end of the rope.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
So it's fair or the same for every cowgirl, how they do that rigging with the string that breakaway, breaks loose, and the flag's there to kind of help the judge see.
To sight on it. Yeah, that's his sight indicator. And that little string that ties that on is just like the string that ties the barrier.
Yep.
You know, so it's an equal deal for each contestant. Yes.
Yep. No, a lot of fun to watch, and I've seen some ladies do sub threes is a really good run, right?
Oh yeah.
So they're amazing athletes, and I'm glad that we have them. All right, now we're going to roll back to saddle bronc riding, using a horse, a little bigger horse, but talk to us about this, which is different than bareback.
Okay, so saddle bronc riding is a classic event of rodeo. Probably, if you wanted to get down to the nitty gritty, I think that's the event that started rodeo. And like the name denotes, you use a saddle, a halter with a bronc rein, and saddles put on the horse in the chute, fitted to that horse. The saddles, they're different than your pleasure saddle that you ride, but
what's different about them? Like the stirrups, are they more free?
They are. The stirrups and the fenders and everything is, they have a lot of range of motion towards the front of the animal, and there's not much to a saddle bronc saddle. You know, they're not near as beefy and bulky as a pleasure saddle.
No saddle horn.
No saddle horn, correct. Yeah, that's the big thing, no saddle horn.
You know, I heard something about that. I heard one of our own legends here, Chuck Shepard, was one of the first cowboys to cut the saddle horn off of his saddle bronc saddle.
So I heard the same story. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. I mean, he was a legend and a character. And so I heard that very same story from the old timers.
Yeah.
But,
I'm going to have Ricky and Johnny Kekeffer in here eventually, and maybe they can shed a little more light on that.
Oh, I'm sure they can.
Their grandpa,
Yeah.
So anyway,
anyhow, the horse is loaded up, and the rider mounts again. With those real loose stirrup leggings that they get that spurs up over the points of the shoulders. Lean back, give a nod, gate opens. Time starts when the animal breaks the plane of the gate, just like all three rough stock events. And in that event, they lift on the rein. They're not so much pulling on it. It's lifting. I rode a few broncs in my day, and I was told by the old guys, it's like you pick your beer up off the bar and you take a drink and then you set it back down on the bar. That's that fluid motion of the rein hand. The free hand in saddle bronc riding, the judges are really looking that they have that free hand extended out behind them and straight. It's being the classic event. In saddle bronc riding, you want to look like you want to make it look easy. I never made any of them look easy, but Jim Dewey's made a lot of them look easy.
Yes, he has.
And again, they're going to spur from as far forward as they can get, beating the horse back to the ground as his front feet go down. When his front feet hit, the rider's feet in the stirrups want to be up there already in the front end of the animal. Boom, the front feet hit. That rider will snap those feet towards the back, and the object is to spur that horse. They want those spurs hitting the back of the saddle in the back there.
Yep.
I mean, that full range of motion.
That's about 180 degrees right there.
It is. It's a real long stroke, and it's real snappy. Those guys that are snappy and getting them feet back to the front, that's you look at all them Wright brothers. They make it look real easy. And then again, the horse kicking out the back over his head, trying to get rid of that flank strap and covering ground. But the whole thing about saddle bronc riding is if you watch a guy and he really looks fluid and makes it look easy, that's your winner.
Yeah. No, I'm hoping that our listeners will be a better judge of what's a good ride based on the 100 points you talked about, 50 for each judge, 25 for the horse, 25 for the cowboy for each judge. And really watching the spur in action and how high that horse is kicking, just that alone will give them a lot better feel for what was a good ride or not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When all four, when the front legs are in the air and the back legs are kicked out and they're off the ground, the points are rolling in. That's when it's happening.
I'm looking at Painted Valley in that picture. You've seen it. It's one of our classic, rides of Painted Valley with Vold Rodeo Company. And he's fully extended. Like you said, the cowboy's hand is way out back. I'm sure that was probably nearly a 90-point ride. On Painted Valley, because Painted Valley went to the National Finals Rodeo multiple times.
Multiple trips to the NFR and sired many horses in the Vold string, but Painted Valley, legendary horse. Rarely had a off trip.
Yep.
That, like you said, that horse was an athlete, and that was the Michael Jordan of bucking horses during my day, or my time around rodeo here.
It is special to watch a horse like that perform like that, knowing that is one of the top echelon horses in the business, maybe forever. And it's important for our listeners to know that cowboys come for that kind of stock.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't have good stock, you got to remember that's half your score right there.
Right.
And if they don't have a good out, if they don't have, if they're not bucking good, then you're not going to get paid.
That's right.
And that's why cowboys love to come, because of Vold Rodeo Company.
Right. It's legendary stock, known everywhere and respected.
Yep.
The cowboys respect that livestock, and they know they can have a good winning trip on it.
Yep. Yep. Well, Kirsten's had some amazing horses over the years. Saddle Bronc, somewhat similar to bareback, but you've got a full saddle, you've got a lead rope, and it's a little different action on the spurring action, as you already mentioned, but same kind of points. And you still have to mark out when you come out on the first.
Still have to mark out.
Yeah, on the first jump, which I'm sure a lot of folks have never understood what a mark out is, and I'm hoping after hearing from you today, they better understand. We're going to move back down to the timed event area, and we're going to talk about team roping. And when I think about, the old time contests that Lawton Champy was in, I think of tie down roping and team roping being two of probably the most practical things that these cowboys were doing, that they're doing in the arena, but they're doing every day out there working cattle.
Oh, every day. Yeah. For all the branding and doctoring. And that's the only way to work cattle is with a rope. And these guys still to this day, you can't see these cowboys from the road, but they're out there doing this stuff every day, all day long. And team roping is another real classic event of rodeo because of that.
So walk us through what's going on with team roping, and there's something very special and unique about our Prescott Rodeo with team roping.
There is, and I'm real proud of it. I'm glad we're keeping it. Just the legacy of it. Everybody loves this. The cowboys love this because we're just like the only place that does it, and that is that both of the riders, the header and the heeler, obviously the header is going to catch the head of the calf or the steer first and turn it, and then the heeler will gather up the hind feet of the animal, and when they come tight, that's when the time stops.
Yep.
But the uniqueness, as you say, of our rodeo is they come out of the same box on the same side of the animal, and it's really cool. It's old school. It's way old school traditional, and again, there is a barrier. The barrier's there, and there's penalties. Breaking the barrier or crossfire. That means if the heeler throws his rope before the header's turned the animal, that's called crossfire, and you're disqualified, just like, barriers plus 10. Crossfire is a disqualification. But the coming out of the same box is just really cool. It's a neat deal.
So is our roping box the same size as a typical roping box where they're on both sides of the rope and shoot?
We have them on both sides, but for the team roping, we only use the one side.
So if our box is similar to most other boxes, but now you've got two guys in there. It's a little bit more of a dance because that header doesn't have the same angle. Right. He's
Correct.
closer to the chute now.
Right.
Whereas typically he'd want to be as far away
Yep.
as he could be, but his heeler's over there.
Yeah. He wants to be pinched out in order to get that acute angle to get his horse started while that animal is leaving and getting that head start to drop that barrier.
Yep.
So that gets ruled out. So that's a whole different ball
Which
of wax
takes
for
you
him.
farther down the arena, wouldn't you say? Because the steer
Correct.
has even more of an advantage.
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, both of them being in there, those horses are like you said with the saddle bronc horses, Greg, those are big animals and they're stout. And I mean, two of them in there and they're pretty amped up. They know what they're fixing to do. They live for that.
Yep.
And them animals are amped up and antsy and powerful. And I mean, there's a lot of power in that roping box with two animals in there.
Well, and typically, Robby, the heeler doesn't have a barrier. So in the normal mode of operation, the header would have a barrier to make sure that he doesn't get out too early, but the heeler doesn't.
Correct.
But in our case, they're both behind the barrier.
They are both behind the barrier. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I want to kind of help people understand, you watch them rope the horns or the head, and that's pretty self-explanatory. I think people can get their head around that. But heeling's a whole different thing. These ropes are real stiff, and it's hard to see this happen, but they're throwing that in front of those rear legs as that steer is hopping, and that they knock down the top of that rope.
Right.
But that loop kind of stands up in front of those back legs.
Right. And that allows the feet to come down in it. And of course, you'll see the heeler raise his hand, and that's in order to pull that up, like pulling your pants up, get it up on there where it's going to stay on those both feet. Because if you only catch 1 foot, again, penalty. So the object is to get that rope up by those hocks where you got a good clean catch in both feet.
Yeah, very good. So when you're watching our rodeo on the team roping, pay attention. Both the header and heeler are coming out of the same side. There is a barrier, and we're trying to get the head and both back legs, and you'll watch the judge throw his flag down when the end of the time is signaled when they get those ropes tight. Yep,
that's the judge that's on horseback out there. He'll be, you'll see him moving around trying to catch the best glimpse of where he can watch, that's exactly the process.
Well, we got 2 more events to go here. We're going to go back to the ladies and barrel racing. And this is a classic event that's been around a long, long time with the WPRA. Probably some of the most expensive horses that will enter the arena, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're approaching $100,000 in some cases.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Well, and this makes the case, Robby. I want to put this in right here. We're proposing some improvements at the rodeo grounds, one of which is a covered arena with stalls in there under roof, and some nicer stalls, not just what we have now that are kind of the basic livestock stalls, but something that's a little more substantial and safer. That's kind of the whole point, in my view, of some of why we would do that. Is we want these contestants with these really expensive horses to show up because they're the top competitors, but they really need these kinds of facilities if they're going to come to our rodeo.
They do. And a lot of places already have a facility like that, and they're more apt to go to a facility that's like that than come to our rodeo because of the fact that we don't have it. Like you said, those are high dollar horses, and they're very, very, very well cared for.
It's true of really any of the horses that are performing in the arena. I don't want to, slight anybody else, whether you're a tie down roper or a steer, a team roper or whatever. They're all very important athletes. It's just the barrel racing typically is the most expensive horses. And I would say, to your point, other rodeos have these facilities. And it's really about Prescott making sure we're still relevant 10, 15, 20 years from now.
That's correct. Yeah.
Because if we don't stay relevant, if we don't stay up with the times, we're going to lose some of the top competitors.
That's right.
I'll get off my soapbox. All right. Barrel racing. What are we doing?
So barrel racing, They're going to enter through the alleyway behind the roping boxes on one side. They're next to the roping boxes. From that end of the arena, there's going to be a cloverleaf pattern, 3 barrels set up in what we call the cloverleaf pattern. They're going to enter the arena. There's a timed eye out there. Folks will see us out there setting it up and making sure it's working. They break that plane and that time clock starts. There's also going to be a judge, a horseback out there with a stopwatch to make sure. And he'll drop, one judge will be standing, he'll drop a flag. The other guy will start that manual stopwatch, if you will.
Yep.
The rider will enter the arena. They can go left or right on their pattern. It's up to them. Some go left, some go right. Doesn't matter. They'll go across, complete circle around one barrel, left or right, and then they'll go across the arena to the other one, circle it the other direction. They'll head for the far end of the arena, complete circle on that barrier, and then whip and spur back across that eye there to get the time stop.
And they can go to the left or right barrel, doesn't matter which. They can start either way.
They can start either way, and then the object is not to knock a barrel over. That's where they start getting time added on. So,
I think when we talked about Mike Alderete taking care of the ground, I think this is probably the most important event for good ground.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, the way those horses are turning around those barrels and knowing these are expensive horses that, we just want to make sure that they're safe out there, that they have good footing. And Mike does a great job. And I think this is the event that really defines how well our ground is.
Oh, definitely. And those ladies are the ones that vote on the best footing award from Justin, which Mike's way overdue to win that. And he has won things multiple, but there's a granddaddy out there. I think he's real close. Hope he gets it. So.
Yeah. No, I'm sure he will. He takes that real seriously. He's very passionate about it. We're going to go to the last one here, bull riding. This is always a fan favorite. Walk us through what's going on with bull riding here.
Okay, again, animals are drawn. Some animals are better than others. Right hand and left hand on the deliveries on those animals. Scott Pickens, 4L Diamond S, contracts with Kirsten on our bulls that's brought in there. They are some of the best, without a doubt. Bulls are loaded. They are flanked as well. Their flank is a little bit different. It's a soft cotton rope that's draped around the midsection, and it's got an eye in it. It's pulled somewhat snug and then tied off versus like a bronc as it gets tighter as they go out. Again, the bull just knows that's there, and that's his cue to buck, just like with the broncs. So a bull rider has a rope with a handheld braided in it, a hole, if you will, a hand hole, a handle braided into it. There's 2 styles of bull rope. There's American style and Brazilian style. That depends on how it's pulled. People can use either. Typically, there's some bells on the bottom of the bull rope, and that's in order to get the rope off of the bull after your hand comes out. That's for weight.
Got it.
So you'll hear that clanging when the bulls are bucking.
Got it.
Unlike the horse events, bull riding, there is no mark out. So there's no mark out in the bull riding event. So a rider will put his hand in there, can have a guy pull his rope, and then he'll take the rope and pretty much goes around. You go around your hand. It's called taking your wrap. You're not tied in. You're actually holding that rope together with the strength of your hand. And obviously your hand's got a big leather glove on it. And then the rider will slide forward, get positioned in there, nod his head, the gate will open. Time starts when he breaks the plane of the gate, but with no mark out. Again, 8 seconds. Riding live leather is just flat Western. It's addicting. It's fantastic, and it's Western. I mean, those bulls will jump in the air. Some will spin. Some will stretch out. Some will change directions when they're spinning. All of that adds points. Again, you want them back in, kicking up and over. bull riders staying in control and in balance is the name of the game. That's what's going to get them the points.
Yep.
Same scoring system, 25-25 for each for a total of 100. And
a little less spurring action here, right, Robby? Like, I know if you're in control, you're in the center of that animal, and you're typically outside leg, you can spur and you would get points, but it's not like bareback or saddle bronc.
Exactly. It's not at all like it. And when you're spurring in the bull riding, sometimes you will spur in order to pull yourself back up out of the well, if you will, and get yourself back in the middle of that animal.
Yep.
There's a zone in there where things aren't quite as furious as the rest of the area. And that's where you want to be. So some of that spur in action is to get points, and some of it is actually to readjust and pull yourself back where you need to be in order to make 8.
Yep.
So
speaking of that, talk about the importance of your free hand in terms of balance and keeping you where you want to be.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention that on any of the other rough stock events, but if you slap the animal with your free hand, you're disqualified. It's a disqualified ride.
Yep.
But your free hand is your balance. That's all of your balance. Your free hand and your head. Your head's the heaviest thing on your body. So obviously you want to keep your head out over the front end, where over those front legs where you're in that zone where there's a little bit of non-turmoil, if you will.
Yep.
And your free hand will that's how you're going to adjust that ride. As a bull's spinning, you're going to reach, and as a bull whips around, you're going to pull with that in order to get your momentum going. That's where that spur in action will take place. And you're always wanting to get your feet back in front of your bull rope.
Yep.
If you look at where the rope is and you look where a guy's feet are, the object is keeping them feet. And we used to call it charging the rope. You know, you're charging to stay up on your rope and in front of it. And you're using that free hand to, if you get way back behind you, you're off.
Yep.
The object is to keep that free hand in control and use it as a counterbalance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see guys that know what they're doing, use that free hand really well, particularly on a spinner.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to stay, with that bull, and that free hand is keeping them in that rotation. Well, one of the more dangerous events that we have, all of them have some element of danger, of course, but this one probably the most. Talk a little bit about the bullfighters and what they're doing to keep cowboys safe out there.
Well, that's the unsung heroes of the rodeo business right there. I mean, they are the most athletic by far, and they are in the most danger by far. They're with every animal in there, including the Broncs. You watch those guys; they're always helping and right in the thick of things. And their job is to keep the riders safe, mainly in the bull riding. If you, God forbid, hang up to one of those animals, I've been there, and there's no atheist hung up to a bull. I mean, it gets Western.
Yep.
And those guys are right in there. You'll watch if you folks at home aren't, take your focus off the rider sometime and just watch those bullfighters. They know those bulls, and they'll turn them which way they're going to have their best trip to get them spinning. They know how to get them to turn back, and they'll be in there doing that. But when that rider, if he rides, when he pulls his wrap and takes his exit, the only way to get off of a bull is to be bucked off.
Right.
If they stop bucking, you ain't getting off because they'll get you. And when they get bucked off, when they leave that animal, those bullfighters are in there. They are between them and that rider.
Yep.
And I mean, literally, without them, there is no sport.
Yep.
I mean, those guys are the lifeblood of the sport of rodeo. I mean, they are. I can't even put it into words what those guys do.
Yeah, they put their life on the line every performance, and they're self-sacrificial. They put the life of the cowboy ahead of their own.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're coming between that bull and the cowboy many times.
Yeah. They're fearless, and they are double tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen, I remember one year here, Mike, Matt, and Quirt were in there, and Mike took a back leg right to the face.
Yeah.
I mean, it is almost enough to make you a little upset your stomach. I mean, he took a shot, was out for one bull, and then was right back in there with Kleenex and stuff stuffed up his nose. I mean, to keep the blood. I mean, they're amazing. They're double tough.
And it takes two guys, because you'll see, particularly when a bull's spinning, how they'll each go in, to distract the bull.
Right.
And there's no bench of bullfighters sitting back there behind the buck and shoots.
Oh no.
We only have two.
That's right.
So to your point, he got himself figured out and got back in there.
Yeah.
Now I would get in trouble with Dalton Ward if we didn't talk about the pickup men.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Pickup men. Those guys they're the most cowboy of anybody in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that people don't understand about pickup men, they're working all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when my crew's down there working, those guys are all working. They're running all them cattle. They're moving cattle
behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, all day long, and they're there before the rodeo. But I mean, the job that the folks at home are in the stands are going to see those gentlemen do in the arena, that is the toughest job. That is not easy. I mean, the way they pick those guys up and get out there beside of them, it's been Dalton and Ty for quite a few years now. And I don't ever remember having a bad pickup man with Volds,
Right.
But those guys are legendary cowboys. I mean, they are fantastic athletes. Their horses are amazing. And those guys have so much talent that it's just unbelievable.
People don't really understand what's going on there. People do a horseback ride and it goes from a walk maybe to a trot at the most. These guys are typically at full gallop, full throttle, if you will, through the arena, side by side with a bucking horse. That's typically still bucking to some degree, with the rider still on, and they're trying to keep the horse safe, the rider safe, to help him dismount and to take off that flank strap. I mean, there's a lot going on, and people, I would encourage our listeners to pay just as much attention after the whistle, after the 8 seconds, because that's just as much a part of the rodeo is when the pickup men come in there and take that rider off of that horse.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, back to what we talked about at the beginning of this program was the show going on. They've got to get those animals, the Broncs and the bulls, out of that arena.
Yep.
A lot of the bulls, they'll look. A lot of the Broncs, they know where the outgate is, and they'll head there on their own. But a lot of times, you'll see them with a bronc rein in their hand or a rope around the neck, and they'll both be on each side. Sometimes they're behind pushing a little bit, and they'll clear that arena because you can't have another animal buck out until that one has cleared the arena.
Yep.
So, I mean, they've just got a lot of stuff going on, and super talented, super cowy. I mean, those guys are the real deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, a lot of fun to watch. We appreciate Dalton and Ty and what they bring to the rodeo. We're going to wind down here. Is there anything else you'd like to talk to our listeners about or give a shout out or anything you'd like to say here as we close up?
Well, no, not particularly. I hope everybody wants to come out and enjoy our rodeo. Again, the only place to buy those tickets is worldsoldestrodeo.com. Don't get caught by a scalper. We fought that battle quite a bit. We got a good handle on it. Don't forget the Whiskey River Tavern Corral. That's a good thing. And we hope to see y'all out there. It's going to be a great show. And I appreciate you having me here today, Greg.
Robby, thank you so much for all you do for the rodeo. You're a huge asset. Running the arenas is a big deal. And thank you for your service on the board. We have a great board and you're a part of that. And for everybody out there, I can't wait to see you here in just a few days at the world's oldest rodeo. Thanks for joining us on Ride With Us.